There are moments in history when power stops speaking and silence begins, and sometimes, centuries later, that silence can still be seen in the quiet corners of art history. There are stories whispered between brushstrokes, secrets hidden in plain sight. We often stand in awe before masterpieces, like Van Gogh's Starry Nights or Sun-Drenched Fields, believing they sprang fully formed from a singular genius. But art is a conversation, a dialogue across time and continents. And for Vincent van Gogh, one of the most pivotal conversations he ever had was with a single, unassuming piece of paper. This is the story of that piece of paper, simple woodblock print from a land far away. A print that would ignite his imagination, reshape his vision, and forever alter the course of Western art. To understand the thunderous revolution in Van Gogh's work, we must first travel back, not to the fields of Arles, but to the bustling, floating world of 19th century Japan. The year is 1853. After more than 2 centuries of self-imposed isolation, Japan reopens its ports to the West, and with a flood of trade goods, silk, tea, and lacquerware comes something else entirely, something fragile, colorful, and utterly captivating. Ukiyo-e, the Japanese woodblock prints. For European artists accustomed to the somber tones and rigid perspectives of academic painting, these prints were a revelation. They depicted a world that was vibrant, fleeting, and stylish, the floating world of actors, courtesans, and scenic landscapes. The colors were bold and flat. The compositions, daringly asymmetrical lines, were fluid, expressive, and full of life. It was a visual language that broke every rule they had ever learned, and across Paris a new obsession took hold. Japonism artists like Monet, Degas, and Whistler were among the first to fall under its spell. They collected these prints, studied their techniques, and incorporated their radical aesthetics into their own work. The Impressionists, in particular, found a kindred spirit in the Ukiyo-e masters' focus on everyday moments and the changing effects of light and atmosphere. But for one Dutch artist living in Paris, this was more than just a stylistic influence. It was a profound spiritual and artistic awakening. Vincent van Gogh arrived in Paris in 1886, a man already wrestling with his art and his soul. He was searching for a new way of seeing, a new way of painting that could express the raw, intense emotions he felt inside. And in the humble Japanese prints he discovered in Siegfried Bing's gallery, he found his key. Van Gogh began to collect ukiyo-e with a feverish passion, amassing hundreds of prints. He saw in them not just exotic beauty, but a kind of paradise, a place of harmony, simplicity, and a deep connection to nature that he yearned for in his own tumultuous life. He wrote to his brother Theo, "All my work is in a way founded on Japanese art." He didn't just admire them, he absorbed them. He copied them, not as a mere student, but as a way to enter their world, to understand their very essence. His copies of prints by Hiroshige and Eisen are not exact replicas. They are translations. He electrifies the colors, thickens the lines, and imbues the tranquil Japanese scenes with his own fiery emotional energy. It was a dialogue between two worlds, a fusion of East and West on a single canvas. But among the hundreds of prints he collected, one stood out. It wasn't one of the famous landscapes by Keisai or Hiroshige. It was a magazine cover. The cover of the May 1886 issue of Paris Illustre, a special edition dedicated to Japan. The image was a brightly colored woodcut by the artist Keisai Eisen, depicting a courtesan, or oiran, in an elaborate kimono. For most it was a charming, exotic illustration. For Van Gogh it was a thunderclap. This single image, this print that inspired Van Gogh, became a focal point for his entire Japanese fantasy. It represented everything he found alluring and utopian about Japan. He meticulously copied it, enlarging it onto a grand canvas. But he didn't stop there. He surrounded the figure with a world of his own creation. Look closely at Van Gogh's painting, the courtesan. The central figure is Isis, but the world around her is pure Van Gogh. He frames her with a vibrant, watery landscape filled with bamboo stalks, water lilies, cranes, and frogs. These weren't random additions. Each element was carefully chosen, borrowed from other Japanese prints in his collection. The cranes symbolized longevity and good fortune. The frogs, a recurring motif in Japanese art, often symbolized luck, especially in love. He was creating a symbolic Eden, a lush, almost sacred space around this figure of beauty. The border is a brilliant, almost hallucinatory yellow, his color of sunlight, hope, and divinity. This wasn't just a copy, it was an interpretation, an homage, a dream. He was painting not the Japan that was, but the Japan he imagined a refuge for the soul. This deep dive into the world of Japanese art fundamentally changed Van Gogh's own work. He moved from the dark, earthy tones of his early Dutch period to the brilliant, unmixed colors that would define his greatest masterpieces. Look at his paintings from Arles, created after this period of intense Japanese study. See the flattened perspective in the bedroom, the bold outlines and flat color planes in the sewer, the dramatic, cropped composition of his flowering plum orchard. All of these innovations can be traced directly back to the lessons he learned from the Ukiyo-e masters. He learned to use color not just to describe, but to express emotion. He learned to use line not just to outline, but to convey energy and movement. He saw the Japanese artists as simple sages living in harmony with nature. In a letter to his sister, he wrote, "I envy the Japanese, the extreme clarity that everything in their work has. It's never dull, and never appears to be done too hastily. Their work is as simple as breathing, and they draw a figure with a few sure strokes with the same ease as if they were buttoning their waistcoat." This ideal of simplicity, of clarity, of a life lived in and through art, became his guiding star. He began to see the south of France, with its brilliant light and vibrant colors, as his own personal Japan. Arles became his floating world. It was here, with the ghosts of Japanese printmakers looking over his shoulder, that he would paint sunflowers, the starry night, and the works that would make him immortal. The tragic irony, of course, is that the serene, harmonious world Van Gogh found in Japanese prints was a world he could never truly inhabit. His own life remained a tempest of mental and emotional turmoil. The calm he sought in art was a refuge, not a reality. Yet, the influence remained, a steadying anchor in the storm. The simple woodblock print, that magazine cover from Paris Illustrator, served as a gateway. It opened a door in his mind to a new universe of color, composition, and feeling. It gave him permission to break the rules, to paint not what he saw, but what he felt. It proves that inspiration is a mysterious current, flowing across oceans and centuries, connecting artists in a silent, unbreakable chain. A single image, printed on a fragile piece of paper, can hold the power to change a life, and in doing so, change the way we all see the world. So the next time you stand before a Van Gogh, look beyond the dazzling swirls of paint. Look for the flat planes of color, the bold, dark outlines, the daring compositions, and in them you might just see the faint, elegant echo of a distant land. The ghost of a Japanese master, the soul of a woodblock print, and the story of how a simple piece of paper helped one of the world's greatest artists find his voice. The conversation between them continues, hanging silently on the museum wall, waiting for us to listen. History rarely announces its turning points. If you want to explore more moments when power falls silent, subscribe to Season of Silence. And if this story stayed with you, a quiet like helps others discover it. Another story of silence awaits. Thank you for listening.